So, the goal of Vipassana is to reach a point where we are experiencing different sensation, but we are not getting attached to them. And in order to reach that place, our daily 2 hour meditation practice is super critical. Actually, according to Goenka ji or Vipassana, we should be practicing 24/7, right? But that's really not very practical for us. But in order to reach a place where we can actually practice consistently, we need to really commit to our daily practice, right? And in order for us to commit to our daily practice, we really need to understand what is the importance of our practice, right? If we don't have a solid practice, right, it will become very difficult to go through. I mean, one thing we know that our internal life becomes very difficult, right? What happens is we just keep attaching to different things, minds keep creating different cravings, and it just becomes very noisy inside ourselves, right? And then it becomes very hard to take any decision. It just becomes very complicated and confusing within ourselves, right? So one thing is pretty clear, right? If we don't follow our practice, our internal life becomes progressively complicated, right? And if you, especially if you have done like a 10-day Vipassana course, you know, like a before and after, right? Once you finish your 10-day course, you see that the potential of calm and composed mind, right? And how well you can live in the external life once you have like much more calm and composed mind, right? So one thing is the internal life becomes very difficult if we don't follow our daily practice, and also our external life becomes equally difficult, right? If internally we don't have a solid foundation, if internally we are not centered, our external life will increasingly become less productive, first of all, because we are dealing with a lot of noise inside ourselves. But then whatever else we are thinking we are doing, which are more important than practice, establishing our practice, will have a very negative effect also, right? For example, relationships. If you don't have a solid practice and calm and stable state inside yourself, which is the effect of the practice, you will notice you will be end up reacting. I mean, the interesting thing with the relationship is that it kind of invoke the whole spectrum of feelings, right? And if you're not able to handle those feelings, and if you end up reacting to those feelings, it will make the relationship progressively more complicated again, right? Then you start feeling resentment towards other person is feeling resentment towards you, and the whole thing just become more and more complicated, right? And we would in for us this is really important, so we'll investing more time into that, or the same thing with the career or anything else. But the cause of that problem actually lies within our noisy mind, right? Within our attachment, the nature of the mind. So if so one thing really what we are trying to do is to understand the importance of our practice, right? If we really understand the importance of our practice, 2 hour practice is not that big of a deal, right? If you know that you have a cancer, going through the hospital and going through whatever chemotherapy and the pain and everything, it's not that big of a deal. But the person who thinks he doesn't have a cancer, for him it's like how, why would I, and how would I, and all these kind of things. But if you really understand the importance, right, how is it affecting your inner life, how is it affecting your external life, and how difficult this is going to even become further, right, if you don't establish yourself into your practice, right? So if you understand the importance, then it becomes reasonably possible to establish your 2 hour daily practice, right? Another challenge that happens other than you know understanding the importance of a practice is keep reminding ourselves the importance of the practice, right? Even though we understand the importance of practice, but if we, since most of us are very engaged into the external world, we have our families and we have our job and business and everything, it's so easy to lost, even though we understand, but it is so easy to lost the you know that understanding. So there has to be some way we, with some degree of interval, we remind ourselves like this is why we are practicing and this is why the practice is so important, right? I think there was a similar incident. Once I was reading this book from Raman Maharshi, and one of the disciple asked like very similar question, why can't I continue my practice, or something around the same lines. And the Raman Maharshi answered, because just you just keep forgetting, right? You just keep forgetting like this is what you should be doing. Otherwise, it's not so difficult to continue your practice. So mind has this nature that it forgets, even though it understands this is very important. But you are by nature going to forget this, right? So we have to understand the importance of it, but we also have to keep reminding us ourselves that this is why we are practicing and this is the impact if we don't practice, right? And one of the way to remind ourselves is by watching these videos. But actually the reason why I create these videos is basically for this purpose only, right? So that we remind ourselves that this is why we are practicing. Ideally it would have been like, it would be really nice if we have a community of people who are practicing together, and that way um, we gain more strength from each other. But since most of us probably doesn't have that kind of community accessible to us, the very least we can do is watch this kind of a video or read something which kind of remind us, or have some kind of affirmation or whatever, somehow keep reminding yourself that this is important. And until you become, until your experience of emptiness and things like these become very strong, then that it start pulling you. But until then we have to make sure we kind of remind ourselves, we understand the importance and we remind ourselves about that importance, right? And what happens if we don't really follow our practice, right? So that kind of intention and that kind of understanding and that kind of it repetition of our understanding does help us to establish our 2 hour daily practice, right? And then in my case, if I talk from my experience, right, when I started meditation, initially I understood like it's really important to build a consistent practice, right? So what I did is, for first year I just did like a 24 minutes morning, 25 minutes morning, 25 minutes evening, and I just maintained that practice for a year, right? I mean, obviously, like the best thing would have been to do a 1 hour morning, 1 hour evening, but I understood it's better to do less compared to doing 1 hour practice, but to do it more consistently, right? It would be not as efficient in my understanding to do 2 hour once a week, then do like 20 minutes every day, right? So I understood that, right? So that's why, at least in my case, because I could manage that much time or I could have that much strength, uh, initially for a year I maintained 20 minutes morning and evening, but I did maintain every single day for the entire year, right? And later, as my interests become more deeper and I also had a little bit more time, then I end up doing a lot of courses, and at the same time I was able to establish like 40 minutes to 1 hour practice morning and evening. And interestingly, at some point when I get like too involved in the worldly life, I had like a job, full-time job, had a family and kid and all these things. Somehow for a year I didn't really practice very sincerely. I didn't really do the practice very regularly and all these things. And I noticed like the effect of that in my life. Obviously, one thing is like you become extremely unproductive and you start wasting a lot of time. But the negative effect of your not being practicing regularly, how much that affect your almost every single part of your life, right? From your relationship, your health, your career, and everything. I mean, pretty much everything get really impacted if you're not centered, right? So from there, I learned my lesson, right? From I mean, since then, after that experience, I think I'm pretty much established in the sense that it doesn't really matter if I have today enough energy, if I'm too late, if I'm too early, but I will make sure like the practice happens every single day, right? Because in the end, Vipassana practice is actually a practice, right? It's not the real thing. The real thing is the real life. In the real life, you go through so many different sensations and feelings every single day in a very unpredictable manner, right? So if you are not even doing 2 hours practice, it's going to become very difficult to go through those experiences without reacting to them, right? At one level, if our practice is strong, the external life becomes like a support for our spiritual growth in some sense, right? Because we are growing. Because if we are able to observe the sensation and we are not attaching ourselves, then that kind of help us to grow faster, right? And in fact, that is the whole purpose of Vipassana, that you are able to do this in your real life. On the other hand, if you don't have a regular and consistent practice, there's very high chance that you're not going to be aware and you're going to react very heavily. And the more you are reacting in these kind of cases, internally you are just accumulating more and more of these attachment and aversion, right? And it's just becoming more and more, bondage kind of thing. So that level of practice, right? This 2 hours is not that much time, right? It's not like a lot of time, given that you have to work in the real life where you are going to face constantly different kind of experiences which are going to trigger different kind of emotions inside yourself, different kind of feelings, different kind of sensations. A minimum 2 hour practice will help you to take advantage of these experiences to get even more mature in your practice, right? In the absence of these 2 hour practice, not only you're missing all these opportunities, but the same experience of life will help you to get even more and more bound in the worldly concerns, right? So I don't know how to impress it more strongly, but these 2 hours investment, right? It's not that much of a time investment, right? And in absence of it, it's going to be very challenging to live a decent life actually altogether. Forget the spirituality, right? Yeah, so I think, I mean, for me, it is pretty clear, right, that compromising to our practice is not really a practical thing. Although you have to be a little bit practical about these things, right? You don't want to go to extreme, right? I mean, let's say something happened to some of your family member and they need to go to hospital. Doesn't mean like it's totally. You have to be practical in the life, but into day-to-day basis life, right? Into day-to-day life, there isn't any particular. I mean, these exception happens very rarely, right? In those cases, fine, you skip your practice and whatever. But generally, you don't skip your practice because of these exceptions, right? You skip your practice because you lost the understanding of the importance, or you feel like you're not really growing, or these kind of causes actually creates this condition where we start losing interest in the practice, right? So yeah, I mean, if you wanna at least live a decent life where your actions are more wholesome, you definitely need 2 hour practice, right? On top of it, if your practice is strong, you're progressively using the external life to liberate yourself even more and more.